Hey everyone, if you're new here, welcome. My name is Keisha and today I'm going to be talking to you about all of the books that I read in the month of May. So I am pleasantly surprised that I actually read most of the books that I set out to read in May. I was questionable about if I was going to be able to read all of them because I had such a busy month preparing for summer reading. I know you guys are probably tired of hearing me talk about it, so I'm not going to rant about it today. But I did manage to read 11 books this month, and I'm going to try to get through these as quickly as possible, but I do want to tell you my thoughts on them and a little bit about what they were about. So without further ado, let's just go ahead and get into it. First up, I read The Invited by Jennifer McMahon. As you guys may remember, I was finishing this book up from the previous month because I had not finished it in April, and I did finish it in May. This would have been my second Jennifer McMahon book of the time, but I also read a third one this month, so I am going to kind of tier rank those for you guys to let you know which one is my top and then my least favorite. But The Invited is kind of like if Fixer Upper were haunted, except they're not really fixing up a house, you're building a house. And the couple in this book just happens to be building a haunted house. So there's a couple that moves to Connecticut in this bog that is said to be haunted by the ghost of a woman named Hattie. And Hattie was hung many years ago because she was accused of being a witch. And so now Hattie is said to haunt the bog, and so this couple starts building their house in the bog, and thus you get your haunted house. So this story, as most of Jennifer McMahon's stories do, jumps back and forth in timelines. Oh, Jovi is coming to visit. So this story jumps back and forth in timelines as most of Jennifer McMahon's books do, as I mentioned. And so this one doesn't jump back as much as I would have liked it to, but it deals with our couple in present day. And it also goes back to Hattie and some of Hattie's relatives, and you kind of get to see back from there. I'm a little distracted by my pup. What is it? I told her that we were going to go to Mimi and Gigi's because today is actually Memorial Day and now there's a train in the background, so intermission. So I told her we were going to go to Mimi and Gigi's, which is just my in-laws. We call my mother-in-law Mimi and my sister-in-law Gigi, and so Mimi and Gigi's house is where we're going, and she knows, and she keeps like waiting because she knows I said it, so she's like, when are we going? So that's probably what she's doing right now. But anyways, okay, back to the book. So there is a dual timeline. I do enjoy that. It wasn't done enough for me in this book. Overall, this was a slower book than what I'm used to. It was very suspenseful and I did enjoy it, but not quite as much as I enjoyed The Winter People by Jennifer McMahon. Let's see, I don't even know what to say about it. I guess there were shock factors. There was a twist that I didn't see coming. I do think some people could have seen it coming, but I didn't because I just kind of let myself go in blind. So I did enjoy the story, but I just felt like there was too much of the house building and I don't know, there's a lot. There's just a lot, and it was fine. It was just slow. So I ended up rating this one 3.5 stars, which is still a good rating. It's still above average in my opinion, and I did really enjoy it, but I'm not a huge fan of books with a lot of conjuring and ghosty stuff. I do like my middle grade ghost stories, but adult ones not so much. So this one had a lot of conjuring stuff going on, and I did not like that. So I will say that, but I still love Jennifer McMahon's writing. She really does draw you into the atmosphere. Her writing is so immersive. Her characters are really done really well, and I'm gonna go ahead and wrap that up and let this train pass by, and then we will talk about The Drowning Kind. So The Drowning Kind is also by Jennifer McMahon, and it is her latest release. It came out in May, and I was really excited to read this one because my director and one of my coworkers both read this book and said that it was 5 stars. It was their favorite Jennifer McMahon book, and so I knew I had to get my hands on it. So I checked it out from the library, and I did really enjoy it, but let's go into more detailed thoughts. Okay, so this book follows a girl named Jax, and Jax has a sister named Lexi who has kind of overshadowed her in life a little bit. Lexi's kind of the family favorite, their town's favorite of the sisters. So Jax ends up moving away from home, and Lexi ends up moving to their grandmother's estate. Now, the thing about their grandmother's estate is they visited their grandmother a lot. When they were kids, they swam in her pool, and her pool is actually connected to a spring that, as legend would have it, has healing properties, and you can wish for things and things might come true. But this is very much a everything comes with a price type of book. So you follow Jax, and Lexi has called Jax multiple times, and Jax says I'm not going to answer. I'm not dealing with Lexi. She's kind of like estranged from her, and Lexi has had some mental issues, and so Jax has just kind of brushed it off as this is just one of her episodes. But the next day she ends up finding out that Lexi has drowned in her grandmother's pool. But Jax knows how good of a swimmer that Lexi was, and she doesn't believe this was just an accidental drowning. So she goes back to her grandmother's estate and is determined to find out what has happened to Lexi, and she finds out some more history about the springs, and this is where you get your dual timeline. Each chapter goes back and forth between Jax in the present day and Ethel and Will, which is a couple in, I don't remember the year at this point, but in the past. And so Ethel and Will have an experience with the spring. There was a hotel that opened up, and there's talk of this spring that can heal and all of this different stuff. But there's also this kind of side of it where people are warning you against going to the springs because bad things can happen too. So you get to learn the backstory of the springs, and you get to see how these timelines connect over time. And I really enjoyed that. Once again, I love Jennifer McMahon's writing. It is so atmospheric and so immersive. If that is what you read for, or if that is a huge part of what you love in books, I highly recommend checking out Jennifer McMahon. Now, this was one of the more spooky books that I've read by her. Well, honestly, like all of her books are pretty spooky, so I guess it's not the spookiest, but it did spook me because I don't even know how to explain it, but like, if you have any fears of water, this book is just like, imagine a black pool. It's like obsidian black. You can't see the bottom. You don't know how deep it is, like, and things might be in it. I mean, you just never know. So this definitely creeped me out quite a bit. But I thought it was really good, and it was really fast paced. It was a page turner. I did not want to put it down. But I will say that after all of that, upon the ending of the book, I was left a little bit disappointed. And I think I'm the unpopular opinion with this. Most people have rated this book 5 stars, and I ended up giving it 4. For me, out of the 3 Jennifer McMahon books that I've read, this is the only one that did not have kind of like a gasp moment for me, which means I audibly gasp at something in the book. There was just nothing that surprised me much. I kind of saw everything coming, and the very end twist did not surprise me. I think it was fine. I think some people would not mind that was the twist, but I just thought it was a little lackluster. So I gave the book 4 stars because overall, this was one of the books by her that I enjoyed reading the most, but I was just left a little bit disappointed. So I would rank my books that I read by Jennifer McMahon, The Winter People at 5 stars, number 1. I've upped that rating from 4.5 to 5 stars. Then the Drowning Kind, number 2. The Winter People, The Drowning Kind, and The Invited. So The Winter People is 5 star, The Drowning Kind is 4 star, and The Invited is 3.5 stars. So there's my Jennifer McMahon spiel, whatever. I highly recommend you pick her up. She does have some pretty creepy writing, but it is so atmospheric and good. And I know I say atmospheric a lot, but that's really what draws me into her books. So I would highly recommend picking her up if you have not already, but let's go ahead and talk about some more of these books. Next up, I read Thornhill by Pam Smy, and let me just tell you, I'm not going into detail about this book. If you watch my unhaul video, you will know that I could not stand this book. I despise it. And I really hesitate to say this because somebody's going to get mad at me, but like honestly sat there, and when I finished this book, I was like, I literally want to burn this book. And y'all, I'm a book lover. Like, that is not something I would say, but I could not stand this book. It had potential. It's really neat. It's got like pictures and I don't know if, I guess it's a graphic novel. It's got a lot of pictures, but then it's got like pages with words and stuff too. But this just depressed the crap out of me, and I just did not like it at all. I would not recommend it. It was very like, I don't know. I know like there's bullying in this book, and I know that bullying happens like this sometimes. I know it's important to talk about, but I could not, like, as somebody who has personally been bullied, which I'm sure most people at some point in their life, especially young girls, have been, this was just really hard to swallow, and I did not think that it ended very well. So I think this book is crap, just to be honest with you. It's my opinion. If you like it, please don't take offense to that, but like, I have not felt such strong negative feelings toward the book maybe ever. So I'm getting rid of this. We're not talking about it. If I have to rate it, it's 1 star, but I'd rather not rate it any. Anyways, let's go on to something a little bit better. We have Clara in the Sun by Kazuo Ishiguro. I picked this up for the Homebody Book Club. This was their May pick, and so I knew I wanted to read it and discuss it because I missed out on last month's book club, and I went back and watched it, and I was like, okay. Like, sometimes I don't want to read the books as much, but I'm like, okay, I really want to read this one because I missed out on the discussion. It's just a really good time over there. Those girls really make you feel like you're at home, and it's cozy, and I love it. So if you don't know, The book club is hosted by Liv from Liv's Library, Kaylin from Kaylin Abridged, and Zoe from Zoe Delaney. I will leave all of their information down below about the book club so you can check it out if you're interested. Next month, they'll be reading The Sanatorium, which I've not yet decided if I'm going to read. If I do, it'll probably be on audiobook. But anyways, I'm really excited to get in on this discussion with this one. I think I'm going to have a little bit of a different opinion than other people. Kazuo Ishiguro is a very well-known author. If you have ever heard of the book Never Let Me Go, that was made into a movie, and I have heard that is a great book and a great movie. I cannot say that after reading this I will ever pick up another one of his books, and I will tell you why. I read a little bit of manga, so I read some Japanese literature. I'm familiar with slice of life. I have read Orange, and that is one of my favorite manga. This is very much slice of life, contemporary literature, even like some, I would say it's like literary fiction. I'm just not a big fan of this. Like, I was bored most of the time. Let me tell you what it's about, though. So it's about this artificial friend named Clara, and she is in this store with a bunch of other artificial friends, and what it is there's a store, and these teenagers come in and pick out an artificial friend to accompany them through life. And so Clara is very observant of all of the artificial friends in the store. I think she is the most observant. She really pays attention to things and tries to figure things out. She's very intuitive, and she ends up being chosen by someone, and you see her in the store, you see her with the person who chose her, and how they go through life and what Clara observes. Overall, I was just, like I said, I was kind of bored, and I hate to say that. The writing is really beautiful. It really is. I listened to this on audiobook. I thought that was good, but I just don't think this is my kind of story. During part 4, that's another thing. This book is split up into parts, and so there are places where, like, there's a break in text. So, like, here, there's, like, a break in text, but there's not chapters, and I don't like that because it makes it feel extra long. But at part 4, there was something that happened that, like, piqued my interest that I did not expect, but then it kind of toddled off again, and I don't know, it just wasn't my cup of tea. And I know that a lot of people enjoy this, and I think that if you like Japanese literature, slice of life, you would probably enjoy this. But I just found myself bored, and I did talk to Olivia, who is one of the hosts of the book club, after I finished this and told her my thoughts on it, and she ended up telling me that there was a lot that I think she had read it on Reddit. Like, she'd read some things, like theories of things that happened in this book on Reddit, and there were like paragraphs and paragraphs, and I'm like, if I have to have paragraphs of theory to figure this out, like, this is just not my kind of book. I don't mind some open-ended books, like if I can kind of conclude what's going to happen in my mind, but if it's that much that I missed, which given I was listening to it on audio, so of course there's going to be something that I missed because I don't keep up very good on audio, but I don't know, if there's that much, I just don't feel like it's for me. I know that Kazuo Ishiguro is a very, like, intuitive author, and he has a lot of, like, in-depth stuff, things that make your brain turn, mind-blowing kind of stuff in his books, but I just did not get the hype, so I gave this 2.5 stars, but I do recognize that objectively this would be a good book for a lot of people. It just was not my cup of tea. Next up, I read The Bicycle Spy by Yona, Zeldis, McDonough. I read this for the middle grade book club that I host at my library. This was their pick for the month. I tried to get them to pick something a little bit more on a different culture or historical fiction, and this is the book that they chose. So this is set during World War II in France, and it follows our main character, Marcel. Marcel loves bicycles, and he is a huge fan of the Tour de France, but he's not going to be able to go this year because World War II is going on. But instead, he is delivering bread back and forth from his family to other family members, other people in the town, or friends. But there is more to his bread deliveries than he might realize at first. There's also a character named Delphine that Marcel meets. She is a new kid at school, and she is kind of reserved. She does not interact with a lot of the kids. She's not really trying to make friends. She's reclusing and kind of staying to herself, and eventually Marcel learns why she is being so reserved. So this was a really good book. From an objective standpoint, I think this is a great book for middle graders going into World War II. I think it's a good introduction to World War II. It does give some information in the back about the war and about the Tour de France in case any children are interested in that as well. I personally gave this book 3 stars, but I will say that my book club kiddos gave it 4.5 or 5 stars depending on the kid. Most of them were 5 stars and one was 4.5. And yes, I did tell my book club kiddos how to rate a book 1 to 5, and they do book reviews for me because why not? So yeah, they rated it really highly. They really enjoyed it. So keep that in mind. I'm rating it from an adult perspective and someone who has read a lot of historical fiction, and they are reading it more as being really interested in this and like moving up into it. So I do think this is a good beginner book, but like I said, I gave it 3 stars and I would recommend it to younger kids interested in World War II. Next up, I read The OK Witch and the Hungry Shadow by Emma Steinkellner. I was so excited to get this from School Library Journal at my library. They sent an advanced reader copy. This book does not release until July, so I'm really excited I got my hands on it early. I loved this one just about as much as I love the first one. I still gave it 5 stars because I thought it was really good. It started to go in a little bit of a different direction than I thought it was going to go, or that I expected it to go. But it kind of, what am I trying to say? Like came back around to what I loved about the first one. This is just such a good book, and I highly recommend, if you have not checked out any of Emma Steinkellner's work, please pick up The OK Witch. It is my favorite graphic novel, and this one is I didn't like it as much as the first one, but that tends to be the case in series. I always like the first one best because it's what made me fall in love with it in the first place. But I still gave this 5 stars and think it was really good. So this just continues to follow our character Moth, who has found out that she is actually a part of a lineage of witches, and the first book follows kind of how her family had been persecuted and how that's affecting her in her daily life. And then it also kind of has Halloween Town vibes, so I'm not going to go into that. If you read it, I think you'll know what I'm talking about. But this book kind of continues that story, and I thought it was really good. So I would highly recommend checking this out when it comes out in July. Another graphic novel that I read was Displacement by Kiku Hughes. This is a young adult graphic novel about Japanese internment or incarceration camps. This book follows our main character, Kiku, who is the author as well. So this is telling some of her personal experience, but it is a little bit of a fantasy twist because Kiku ends up being displaced in time, and she goes back to when her grandmother was in a Japanese incarceration camp. In this book, she calls them incarceration camps, but in the back it does say that a lot of times we know them as internment camps, but this is a term that is more like personal to her as an incarceration camp. I did learn a lot about Japanese incarceration camps during World War II and how Japan playing a part in the war affected those Japanese Americans who lived in America during this time, how there was a fear of them being a part of Japan in the war and going against the United States. This was really hard on especially teachers and businessmen that were Japanese Americans because they were thought to have some involvement in the war, and so they were detained in a much harsher way. And then other families were kept in incarceration camps. And yeah, so I did learn a lot about this. I do feel like this book was pushing an agenda, but I understand why it was. I'm not going to go into too much detail about that. I will say that what I took out of this was an appreciation for and an understanding of what happened during this time period. I do think that this was wrong, and I do think that this is something that should be noticed, and we need to move forward and correct things like this in the future. But I was really excited to learn about what happened during this time. So if you are interested in learning more about World War II, specifically Japanese internment camps, Japanese American internment camps, then this is a good graphic novel to pick up. The art is really beautiful, and it was a story that was really well told. I really liked how it was told from someone in present day that was being displaced in the past. I thought that was really neat. So I gave that book 3 stars, and I would recommend it. Next up, I read Alone by Megan E. Freeman. This was one of the first books that I read this month, and I really enjoyed it. This is a book written in verse. It is middle grade, and I originally picked it up because it reminded me of The Hatchet because it's a survival story, and I thought, well, this is just like the girl version of The Hatchet. It's just a girl instead of a boy. But this actually takes place in a town versus in the wilderness, and our main character, Maddie, awaits to discover that her town has been abandoned. She has no idea where anybody is, nor does she have a way to contact her family or anyone else. So she has to learn to survive on her own with the help of books from her local library, as well as her neighbor's Rottweiler named George. That's what his name is. So this is a really good book. I loved it a lot more than I expected to. It made me teary-eyed at the end. There's a little bit that I was unsure about exactly, like specifics on what was going on, but I kind of inferred what was happening. But I did give this 5 stars. I thought it was really good. I would recommend this for a higher middle grade level just because there were a couple of cuss words in there. And then also there were parts that they were very hard hitting. They were very which I mean, it should be. She's trying to survive. But there was one part that had animal cruelty that I just thought was really unnecessary, and I really didn't like reading about it. It made me sick to my stomach, and I was like, why is this in here? So just be aware of that going in. It's a small part, but it's there nonetheless, and it still made me sick to my stomach. So I would say this was probably for older middle grade going into YA. I did really enjoy this, though. I think if you like survival stories, you should definitely pick this one up because this was really well done. Then I read 8 Perfect Murders by Peter Swanson. I originally picked this book up because we had author R.J. Jacobs visit our library last month. He wrote the book Somewhere in the Dark that I read last month. If you'd like to hear my review on that, you can go ahead and go back to, I'll tag the video up top. It was my April wrap up. So I'll go ahead and put that a tag for that up above if you would like to hear my review of his book. But he was talking about, we had kind of asked him, who's your inspiration? Who do you aspire to write similar to? Like, who do you think you would be similar to in your genre? And he said Peter Swanson. And so he said he really enjoyed Peter Swanson's writing. And I remembered that I had 8 Perfect Murders on my shelves. I won this in a Goodreads giveaway sometime in 2020. It came out in March 2020, and I still haven't read it. So I decided to read it. I listened to it on audio, which is not the way that I would advise you to consume this because it was very confusing. Overall, it was okay. I didn't enjoy it as much as I would have liked to. I think I gave it 2 stars. This is about a man named Malcolm Kershaw, and he's a bookseller and a mystery aficionado. He's compiled a list of the genre's most unsolvable murders that he has put in a blog post called 8 Perfect Murders. So these are chosen from among the best of the best novels. So you've got The Red House Mystery by A.A. Milne, Malice Aforethought by Anthony Berkeley Cox, The ABC Murders by Agatha Christie, Double Indemnity by James M. Cain, Strangers on a Train by Patricia Highsmith, The Drowner by John D. McDonald, Death Trap by Ira Levin, The Secret History by Donna Tartt. If you have not read any of those 8 books, do not read this. It's going to spoil you for them. And it tells you that at the beginning. I didn't think I would get to these ever, if anytime soon, so I just let it spoil me. But if you have not read them, it's going to spoil you. If you didn't like those books, I don't think you'll like this book. And if you did like those books, I think you would like this book. If you like a more literary fiction type mystery, I think you would probably enjoy this. I was enjoying it up until about halfway through, and then I got confused because there were more characters introduced, and I was listening to it on audio, and there was a lot going on, and I just kind of lost interest. So I think I stopped with like maybe a third of the book left. I don't know. I think I hit almost 200 pages before I quit, but I just didn't feel like finishing it because I wasn't enjoying it. So I did DNF this book, but I did go ahead and count it as read because I read most of it, and I think that should count. So I rated it 2 stars. Just wasn't for me. There wasn't enough suspense or thrill or anything like that. This is just like a basic literary mystery. So if you like things like that, I think you might enjoy this. Also, if you have read anything by Peter Swanson that you have enjoyed and you think I might enjoy, knowing that I like thrillers, please recommend me a Peter Swanson book in the comments because I really do want to try another one of his books. I just don't think this was the right one for me to pick up. I have looked at Before She Knew Him, I think is what it's called, and The Conworth Killing. Please let me know if you think I would like either one of those if you've read those, but this one just was not for me. I only have 2 more books left in the stack, and this one is After I Do by Taylor Jenkins Reid, and this was my favorite book that I read this month. I did not expect to love this as much as I did. I also didn't expect to even get to this one this month. I kind of threw it on my TBR last minute just because I'd gotten it for cheap on Amazon. It's like $2 on Amazon. I don't know if it's still that cheap, but if it is, you absolutely need to grab it because, oh my goodness, this is so good. This is probably going to be on my favorite books of the year list. But let me go ahead and tell you what it's about. So the blurb says, a breathtaking novel about modern marriage, the depth of family ties, and the year that one remarkable heroine spends exploring both. So this story follows Lauren and Ryan, which it's from the perspective of Lauren. Lauren and Ryan have been married or together for 11 and a half years. They haven't been married for the whole 11 and a half years, but they've been together for 11 and a half years. And they have reached a breaking point in their marriage. They are arguing all the time. They cannot get along. They don't want to be in the same room with each other. So they decide to separate for a year. They don't divorce, they separate for a year. And there's only one condition: they cannot contact each other. Anything else goes. So this book, it's so deep. It's so hard-hitting. It's so good. And I was questionable about it at first. I was like, this sounds like a really intriguing concept, but is this going to mess with my traditionalist views of marriage? Will it? Yeah, I mean, it's not gonna, what she's doing is not traditional, but it's so good. You get to see different perspective of marriage because during this time, Lauren goes back and kind of gets in, not that she's really been separated from her family, but you get more of the family dynamic from her. You have her sister Rachel, who is not in a relationship. You have her brother Charlie, who I'm not going to tell you about his relationship status because that would be a spoiler. You don't know that from the beginning. You have her mom. Her parents are divorced. Dad's not in the picture, and now her mom is just kind of frivolously dating anybody but has no plans to get married. Then you have Grandma Lois, who reminds me of my nanny. And I love Grandma Lois. She has a very traditional mindset of marriage. Her husband has passed on, and I just love Grandma Lois, and I got really attached. And yeah, anyways, I'm not going to go into that. But Lauren gets to go on this journey of kind of self-discovery and determining. I'm going to go ahead and read some of these questions here because I like the way it's phrased. She starts to question when you can have romance without fidelity and commitment without marriage. When love and lust are no longer tied together, what do you value? What are you willing to fight for? Please read this. If you are married or have been married, I think you can really enjoy this book. I will say I did not read this, nor do I read most books for self-help, but I will say that I did take some things from this book to go towards my personal life. There are some very good things in this book. There are memorable moments. There are, I don't want to say like good advice, but things to take with you into your own marriage just to kind of like make you think, if anything else. But like, gosh, this was such a good book. I wish I had better words to talk about it. I have read Taylor Jenkins Reid before. I read The Seven. I have to slow down because I'm going to say the wrong name of this book like I do every time. The Seven Husbands of Evelyn Hugo, which I enjoyed. It wasn't my favorite, but I think it's just because the book wasn't for me, but I objectively think it was a great book. I think I rated it 4 stars. And I've also read Evidence of the Affair, which was a novella, and I think it's only on Kindle, but I read that and I really enjoyed it. But this one, oh my goodness, this is so good. Please pick this up. Please, please, please. If you have not picked this book up, pick it up. I laughed. I cried. My heart was in it. I felt every stinking emotion under the sun. I was frustrated, like literally every emotion. I cried from the beginning when they were fighting just because I was like, oh my God, because I'm married and I've been married. Well, I've been with my husband for 10 years and we have been married for 8 years. So yes, this hit very close to home. Oh my goodness, like just please read this. Please read this book. 5 stars. It's going to be one of my favorite books of the year. Okay. The last book is Wichita Atelier Volume 3. You've heard me talk about this enough on my channel. I love this series. If you've not read manga, this is a great one to start with. Volume 3 was just as good as the first 2 volumes. I rated it 5 stars. I'm not going to go into detail. Just pick this up if you haven't already. Okay, y'all, that's all the books that I read in the book of May. Wow. In the month of May. I hope you guys enjoyed hearing my thoughts on all of them. Please let me know what your favorite book that you read in May was in the comments below. As you all know, After I Do is my favorite, and I really want you guys to read that one if you haven't. Please do. If you have, let me know in the comments what you thought, because I know everybody probably won't enjoy it, but man, it was so good. Anyways, I hope you enjoyed my little spiel on all of these books. If any of them piqued your interest, let me know in the comments. If you've read any of these books, let me know in the comments what you thought about them. And I guess that's it. So if you like this video, go ahead and hit the like button down below. And if you would like to see more videos from me, you can always hit the subscribe button and the bell to get notifications whenever I post a new video. Thank you all so much for watching, and I will see you in my next video. Bye, friends.